22nd of April with your conference hosts, Bishop John and co-pastor Penny Francis. Our guest speakers will be Bishop George Bloomer from the USA, preaches on deliverance. Dr. Paul Eneche from Nigeria, largest church in the world, preaches on the power of God. Pastor Steve Muncie from the USA preaches on powerful illustrated sermons. And Pastor Andre Jones, Ruach City Church, Philadelphia, preaches a revelatory word. With guest psalmists Anthony Brown and Group Therapy, Megan Williams McNeil, and Zen Praise. Join us from the 18th to the 22nd of April at Ruach City Church, the Gaumont State Theatre, 197 to 199 Kilburn High Road, London, NW6 7HY. Day and evening sessions, or register now for preferred seating. For more information and hotel accommodations, visit our website, www.ruachcitychurch.org, or call 020-8678-6888. Prophetic Prayer and Praise Conference 2019. Co-Mission.
You're welcome to the live studios of Ben Television UK. I have a very special guest with me. Something remarkable will be happening in the city of London next weekend. That is the Easter weekend. We are all looking forward to it. The Royal City Church have put together a fantastic event, the Prophetic Prayer and Praise Conference 2019. I have the Bishop John Francis with me. He is the Papa of the church.
That's what they say.
Can I use that line?
I'm used to that. I'm used to that.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you for having me on Ben TV. I've been watching and being blessed by the different things that's happened on this TV and the history. It's been on for a while and
definitely
representing us people of color, so we're excited about.
Yes, and of course, you have been touching the lives of millions of people.
Yes.
We're talking about this church started 26 years ago.
Yes, Ruach City Church. I first started with my father's church some years ago, and my father was a bishop. In fact, he was one of the pioneers of black Pentecostal churches in this country when after sort of the war. So he was quite known, and I felt the Lord was telling me to move on, which was very difficult because in those days you don't leave your father's church, you don't leave sort of the establishment. But God kind of instructed me, and I went and spoke to my father, and he said, go ahead. I think he said, go ahead, because God told him to. Then we started with 18 people. And within 3 months, we had 150 people. Now, you've got to understand, in those days, if you had 150 people, that was a big church. It was really a big church then. And in fact, because at that time, my father had about 150 people. So I ended up having the same amount of people he had within 3 months. And then after that, the ministry just exploded by then. We kept seeing people coming, drug addicts getting saved, people was off the streets coming to Christ, and lives turned around. It was phenomenal, and then it just kept growing and growing and growing until now we are one of the fastest growing churches in the country.
And the biggest.
Yeah, one of
the biggest.
Yes,
definitely.
God has blessed us.
That's huge.
Yeah.
I would want to know, and I'm sure our viewers at home would also want to find out, how was it starting? Apart from you hearing the voice of God to say, go ahead, set up your own church.
Yeah.
And it was speaking to you, that what was it?
It was very difficult and complex. As I said, my dad was known, and when you belong to a sort of an organization that's known, and you're going to come out and do your own thing.
Yes.
And let me just give you a little picture. In those days, church was a little bit different to how it is now. Very strict. Women can have no makeup, no jewelry. They had to have hats on their head because all of the outward appearance was very much a big thing.
Yes.
And so when I left that kind of establishment and started now Ruach City Church, and I was more going for street people who, or should I use the word unchurched people. For them, jewelry, makeup wasn't a challenge. They wanted God. They wanted their life change. So it was very a difficult time, and plus the culture at the time is different how it is now. There wasn't Christian TV. It wasn't like how you see church now. It was very traditional in its upbringing. So we launched out, and then we saw God bringing people in, and we were seen as almost the bad or the naughty church back in those days, because we were not conforming to what we were brought up to, with the no drink, no makeup, etc. So some people demonized us and like, oh, don't go down to that church. That's the church where everybody does what they want to do, which is not true.
Okay.
It was just because we didn't conform to all of that. Secondly, what was hard as well, we actually were sort of pioneering in terms of how church would look like. Because I remember those days, in terms of a main church, it was our church. There was a church called Rhema at the time, and KICC, and Victory Church, and another church called Kensington Temple, in terms of prominent churches. And we were seen as the church that brought in sort of Pentecostal and charismatic, because there was and evangelicals, because they were all separated at the time. And it was a kind of a different season, and people were coming to know God, and there was a little bit more structure to church, because that was the next thing that we did. We put a little more structure to church. Whereas before, church was like a little community, and everybody did what they did, and whatever the pastor says, we agree.
Yes.
But what happens now, you've got real educated people. Some of the people who was coming to my church were doctors and lawyers and stuff, and you had to kind of streamline things.
Would you say this change is good for Christendom?
I believe it is. One of my challenges now is that if we're not careful, the authenticity of God kind of is put to the side, because everybody's being a bit structural, and it can't be helped, because the church has become I have to speak to leaders. The church has become an organization, and it's an organism. And the problem you have with an organization, you have the spiritual side and you have the business side.
Yes.
And if you like any organization, if you don't have proper structure, the organization will fall apart. And especially the bigger it gets, the more people are employed. And you see, where my father's church, we probably had one person and a leader employed, a secretary and the pastor. But like now, I've got, numbers of people. I have staff. I've got caretakers.
How many people do you have?
We employ plus
yeah.
40 people. If I can, part-time and some full-time. I don't know the actual numbers.
Yes.
But for example, our church at the moment, we have several locations. We have 5 locations. So in each locations, we have people employed. We have our finance department that looks after stuff. We have the administration department. We have HR, just like any organization.
That's huge.
Yeah. So we're structured just like any organization. But with all of that comes sometimes, I said this, I was in a meeting one day with my trustees, and they were asking me, we need to do this, look at health and safety, the rules, look at
insurance and all of this.
Yes, and a whole lot of stuff that when I started, all I wanted to do was see people get saved. And I'm thinking, wait a second, I didn't sign up to all of this. But as a pastor, you almost are like a CEO of a company. And you got to recognize that as you're in charge, along with we have trustees and business people, we have to make the right decisions so that the organization of the church can sustain itself. Now, with that, you can end up being too business orientated till you forget this is church. People came here to hear God so that their life could be changed, to turn them from darkness into light, from the power of Satan onto Christ. That's our mandate. But if we're not careful, you can get so caught up.
I'm really excited that you're open. You're really truthful about this.
Yes.
God,
I know,
it's remarkable.
I know there's always a belief that, because the church has become business, people feel, now it's because there's an argument out there, and we can't deny it. It's the elephant in the room. There's an argument. Some people feel church is not sincere anymore, and there's all about money and what have you. But if you run it properly, like I do, I don't sign a check in my church. I have people who are in charge. We have systems that are in place. People have to sign off, so one person can run off with money. Before, people could do that, but this organizations that, and so you run the church properly. But what happens with all of that organization, you've got to be careful that your main aim, the real thing, is to preach to God's people, turn them from the power of Satan to Christ, And that's supposed to be our focus.
Or else we might lose focus.
Yeah,
Which is the
and
most...
it can happen.
Okay, in a multicultural environment
Yes.
like the United Kingdom, especially London,
Yeah.
what's the role of the church?
I think the role of church has become very complex now. Why? Because we're in the world, but we're not of the world. Now, what do I mean by that? We don't pattern ourselves after the world. We're supposed to be a royal priesthood, a holy nation, peculiar people. So what God has done is put his power in us, and we should be the leading factor. But yet still, we can't deny that all the things that happen around us doesn't affect us. Gun crime, for example, that we're seeing happening, knife crime. And one of the things that we are noticing is that some of the things that are happening, someone in our church knows someone or is a family of someone
or is affected
by it. So you can't deny that. So when you talk about what is the role of the church, it's complex. We look after people's spiritual side, but at the same time, we have to look after their well-being, their social well-being. We're not a bank, but yet still we try to help people out. For example, we have a food bank, and we help people. In fact, we were one of the first to have a food bank long time ago, 26 years ago, when nobody was doing food banks. We were helping people who were struggling, because my church, when I started, a lot of people was off the streets and they couldn't afford things. So we had to find a way. We don't want to give them money because some of them were on drugs and they would take that for drugs. So we thought, let's say we'll look after them in terms of food and et cetera, et cetera. Then we had to encourage some of them by having classes and pushing education and pushing them to go back to school or go back to college and reform themselves in terms of education. So as a church, our job is quite complex. We have to look after the spiritual but the social being of people's life.
Well, that's a lot.
It is a lot.
And the church needs to be financially stable.
We have to have finance to do the things that we're trying to do. And sometimes, if I be honest with you, and as a preacher, when you do stuff, sometimes you're an enemy to your own success, because people have a high expectation and they think you're supposed to do everything. And, you know, when people give, that money has to go out and be dispersed in so many different areas. When I sit down in finance meetings and see all the things, I'm like, oh gosh, we have to look at this, we have to do this, we have to do that. And it's quite complex, and people don't realize that.
But you do get support from church members?
Yes, the people give. We have people who give, and, you know, if there's someone who want to still give, you know, we are always in need of finances, because we have projects that we want to do. You know, we own a 20 plus acres of land, and it's been sitting there because of this Brexit situation. Everything's on hold with the government. We plan to build a school, and it's going to cost us millions to do that. Why we're building a school? Because, you know, we keep talking about education and how we can change things, but I think it's a known fact that church schools, because of our moral ground and moral standing, seems to do better than a lot of other schools. So that's been something as a vision in my heart. So we want to have our own school.
You know, as a journalist,
yes,
and we read,
yeah,
or maybe we tend to have certain perception, which is not wrong,
yeah.
But from what we get to see from a lot of mega churches, they receive a lot of money from those who love to give, with the belief of giving that you would return. But then a lot of people tend to feel the church is not using the money appropriately.
Yeah.
And then there's the controversy of giving, the tithing, and all of those. But
let's be honest. There has been in the past. You know, I've come from a legacy. As I said, my dad was a bishop, so I've known what the history has been over the years. And me personally have been very particular about that, because you've had those who had, like in the early days, a lot of preachers did things for little and nothing. My father's day, the perception was all the offering that was going, he was getting a whole heap of money. And I knew my dad spent a lot of money, his own money, trying to keep ministry going. The problem was they were never good in those early days of doing business in terms of the church, telling people what money was spent for when they didn't have enough. Now we move on to the next kind of generation. Now There are the generations that now, okay, they understand scripture, they know how to organize, and they're asking people to give. There has been, can't deny, some people that have not structured their church right. So they've been able to take a little money out of the kitty and do things that they're not supposed to do.
Yes.
So I will not deny that. But not everyone is like that. Not every church is like that. There are a lot of sincere churches who are trying to...
If I could quickly chip in, I wish we had met you when that issue was...
Yes, I was watching it. I was watching it about the tithes.
We could get your opinion on it.
You know, let me just say this. One of the challenges, I always say to people, tithing is a biblical thing. Jews don't have a problem with tithing.
Yes.
Tithing, yes, in those days, it was off what you call the crops. People, that was their source of income. In fact, I was teaching, the Bible's all about agriculture anyway. So everything to do with finance and wealth, we judge a person's wealth by the property, by the land they own, what they produced, okay? And so in those days, they would take a tenth and they would give back. That is something, in fact, it instigated from the book when Abraham first gave a tithe to Melchizedek, and we believe Melchizedek, because of the scripture, was a type of Christ. And so then in the later on in the Old Testament, there was now a law of tithing, which is 10% to give. And so that's always been something that's been brought in the church.
The tithes start from Abraham or Cain and Abel?
Abraham, well, Cain and Abel gave an offering, but we're talking about tithing. Which
okay.
Is So then now when you go further on, you will notice that even Jesus in Matthew endorsed tithing. He never was against it. He endorsed it. Some people says, well, we shouldn't, do it, tithing. It's an Old Testament law. And I say, okay, which one do you want to choose, Old Testament or New Testament? Because the New Testament people, they didn't tithe. But you know what they did? They sold all their properties and they gave it and put it at the apostles' feet. I told them, which one do you want? I prefer to do the 10% than to sell everything I have and give.
Yes.
But that's the structure of tithing and giving. Now, here's the next thing I tell my church. I says, tithing is important, one, to keep the ministry going, but also our community. We cannot do anything unless we put our finances together, put our resources together. The challenge is, as people of color, we have this challenge. We are suspicious, and because it's down to slavery, I can have a good conversation on this, and it will go really deep. Mm-hmm. But here's my thing. When we have the different Muslim communities and all that, they have no problem in giving their money for mosque and giving to help the agenda. What we need to understand that when we tithe and we give offering to a organization and structured a church, we are helping our community. I'm letting you know that all of these austerity they've been talking about, if we as a church wasn't in our community helping people, there'd be a lot of people worse off today. They say the church ain't doing anything. They say, oh, look at gun crime, look at knife crime. They are not talking about the young people we have in our church who are not involved in knife crime, who's not involved in gun. And I'm not saying we should not look at that, because we are involved as a church. Yeah. But it's almost demonizing all black folks, demonizing everything, because one group of people has taken advantage. So, no organization would survive if it doesn't have money.
Yes.
And I just think everything needs to be structured.
Oh, definitely. Yes. And I think since you mentioned the people of color, I think as a people of color,
yes,
we need to build our industry. We need economic power,
yes,
and we need to support each other. Where else are we going to get it from? And then when you mentioned the role of the church, there's a recent news on CNN about some black churches which some people went to burn down. And they said this church historically were behind the freedom talks, usually during Martin Luther King Jr.'s time, the role the churches played, the people actually gathered there before they went to have their march and protest. Apologies. And you saw the change they brought about.
Yes.
So now, in today, the modern world where we are today, especially in the UK, the church still has a lot of role to play.
Definitely.
In terms of how our youths are growing up, in terms of family stability.
Yeah. But please understand, we have been playing that role for years. Remember, the church had been the community. My parents were West Indian, And the church played a vital point in role, especially when they came in the 50s, because that was the place everyone came to. There was no black community centers. There was no some of the things that we have now. That was the place they went to. You know, my friend talked about one day, you know, he was hungry and he needed something to eat. And he was like, well, what do I do? He said, it was a Sunday. He says, let me find a church that has a convention. Because if they have a convention, they're going to have some food there. Because we always cook for everybody on the day when everybody comes together. So the church has always been that group that everyone comes to. All I've seen over the years, because we've been organized and some has taken advantage, unfortunately, the church has been demonized. And it's kind of a plan.
Sadly.
It's a plan sometimes, and sometimes it's not even us doing it. It's outside doing it, because you divide us so you can rule us. And we got to be careful that a lot of times that we don't allow people's influence to demonize everything. We can look at and say, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's cool. But the church on the whole has always been the community that everyone comes to. And I'm going to tell you something. Half of the people who demonize us, when they're in trouble, guess where they come? To church. And they ask, pray for me, help me with this, counsel me in this. And you know, we sit down and counsel them and bring them some direction.
The church indeed has a lot of work to do.
The world has a lot of work to do.
The world
as well. The world.
Yes.
Why I say this? Because we're all a part, all members of the church, all members of society. And a lot of times when things go wrong in the church, it's personalities. Let's remember that. Personalities who unfortunately has influence and do the wrong things. And by them doing the wrong things, just like what's happening in our politics, it affects everyone.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So we're going to come back to that. But of course, the reason why you're in our studios is to talk about this marvelous event that is coming up. Another conference that is coming up next weekend. Okay, viewers, if you're just joining us, I have been speaking to Bishop John Francis. We'll be going on break, and when we come back, we'll be talking about the conference that is holding next weekend.
Get ready for Prophetic Prayer and Praise Conference 2019, Co-Mission. Thursday the 18th through Monday the 22nd of April, with your conference hosts, Bishop John and co-pastor Penny Francis. Our guest speakers will be Bishop George Bloomer from the USA, preaches on deliverance. Dr. Paul Eneche from Nigeria, largest church in the world, preaches on the power of God. Pastor Steve Muncie from the USA preaches on powerful illustrated sermons. And Pastor Andre Jones, Ruach City Church, Philadelphia, preaches a revelatory word. With guest psalmists Anthony Brown and Group Therapy, Megan Williams McNeil, and Zim Praise. Join us from the 18th to the 22nd of April at Ruach City Church, the Gaumont State Theatre, 197 to 199 Kilburn High Road, London, NW6 7HY. Day and evening sessions, or register now for preferred seating. For more information and hotel accommodations, visit our website, www.ruachcitychurch.org, or call 020-8678-6888. Prophetic Prayer and Praise Conference 2019, Co-Mission.
Okay, Prophetic Prayers and Praise Conference 2019. If you're just joining us, this is the live studios of Ben Television. My name is Rose Peter Graham, and of course I have with me Bishop John Francis, and we're going to be talking about what the Ruach City Church will be doing next weekend, which is a Prophetic Prayer and Praise Conference 2019.
Yes.
Bishop John Francis, take it away. Tell us about this event.
Well, I've been having this event. It's the Prophetic Prayer and Praise Conference. It's combined of people who look at what when we're talking about the prophetic side of the church, where God speaks and what God is saying right now, kind of thus saith the Lord. And then, of course, the next thing is we have speakers that deal with prayer. intercessory prayer and guide us on prayer. And then the last one is praise, because we're quite the musical and praising church. So that's what that conference is about. So we've got speakers that's coming to the conference are incredible. We have a guy named Bishop George Bloomer from the United States. He deals with deliverance, and so he's going to be talking a lot on that. And then we have from Nigeria, my good friend Pastor Paul Enichi from Abuja. He is going to be talking on the deliverance power of God. He's believes in the miracles, signs and wonders. And then we also have one of my good friends from Indiana, Muncie. His name's Steve Muncie, rather.
Yes.
He's incredible. He does what we call illustrated sermons. So he preaches and you actually think you're in a theater. He sets the whole scene up. He's got music behind him. It is so powerful. Every year he gets to us. And he's incredible. And then I've got one of my sons who I have a church in Philadelphia that we start, Rack City Church, and he's going to come. He's a revelatory preacher. So we've got that. We've got musical guest from Zimbabwe. I'm a group called Zim Praise. Absolutely fantastic. A group that everybody knows, Anthony Brown and Group Therapy. They're from the United States. And a lady named Megan McNeil, she's from America as well, a praise and worship singer. And then Ruach itself is known for their singing and what have you. We're going to be releasing our EP as well in the conference. So it's going to be great. We've got the youth session that's going on. My daughter, who's one of the youth pastors, and one of my spiritual sons and daughters, they got from Birmingham, from London, from East London, from South London. They're going to be doing a thing called Men in Black, which I'll tell you a little bit about that.
Okay.
And on the Friday, we have what we call a production, which my wife is going to call Change. And we thought, because every Good Friday, we have a Good Friday service, so we thought, let's do something different this year. So we're doing like a production. It's free of charge, and it's going to be powerful. So it's a wonderful, packed weekend, right from the 18th to, I think it is the 22nd.
It's
Monday.
a four-day.
Yes.
Okay, with the bank holiday, of course.
Yes.
Okay.
Is it 5 days? I think it's 5 days.
5 days.
Yeah, right.
Thursday, Friday. Oh, yes, 5 days. Thursday, Friday,
Saturday,
Sunday,
Sunday,
and Monday.
Yes, that's right.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, so when do we have this man of God speaking? Now I'm asking for myself.
Okay, all right. So we kick off the first day with Pastor
Yes.
Andre Jones from the USA.
Yes.
He's going to be speaking. And the second night is going to be Pastor Paul Enichi from Abuja. And I'm trying to remember this. And then on Saturday, well, as we said, we got Saturday.
What time, though?
Friday is the production. The times are, I think it's 6:30 in the evening, and it's 11 o'clock in the day on Friday, and which is the production, 11 o'clock. And then on Saturday at 1 o'clock is the youth session, which is the Men in Black thing that they're doing. And in the evening is service again at 6:30. So 6:30 is going to be past Bishop George Bloomer Saturday, and Sunday is preaching as well. And in the evening, 6:30, and then on Monday is Steve Muncie, and that's like at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because after we've boogied and praised God on Sunday, giving them a little sleep in, and they come at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we finish at 6.
The Men in Black.
Yes. Right, so these are young people, and they're incredible. Our theme is co-mission. It's actually taken from the scripture, go into all the world and preach the gospel. It's called the Great Commission. So it's a play on the word co-mission. We do it. Mission means a vehicle to get somewhere. So what the youth have come up with, it's more of an agency kind of thing. I don't know everything they're going to do, because they surprise us every year.
Yes.
Last year they did the legacy of, because our theme was legacy. They did the legacy of the lion, and they took the Simba and Lion King thing. They dressed out the whole church. They had the singing. It was fantastic. So, the youth are creative.
They are dynamic.
Definitely, definitely. And so they have their way of expressing. So we've given them that to so we're inviting all the young people to come from everywhere and just enjoy. That's 1 o'clock on Saturday.
Definitely, to see what their mates are doing, and of course they could also contribute. So that's going to be at 1 p.m. Men in Black co-mission, Saturday 20th April 2019 at 1 p.m. Of course, the Ruach Church City, 197 to 199 Kilburn High Road, London, NW6 7HY.
Yeah, they can go on our website, Ruach City Church bishopgeorgeblumer.org and get some information. I think it's up on the screen. And they can register for preferred seating. It's free, by the way. All services are free, but because there's sometimes a crowd, people want to have a special seat, so they can do that, get a preferred seating, go on the website.
Oh,
and
okay.
by the way, they'll get a nice package when they get registered. They get their free t-shirt, because we have a t-shirt day, and they'll get a CD, a brand new CD that we're coming out with.
So what's the website again?
The website is www.rackcitychurch.org.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you could go online.
They can go on right now online
Yes.
and register, and they will have their preferred seating, and they will get their package of their you know that.
And you have the seat reserved for them.
Yes, they'll have their reserved seats.
That is really cool.
Yeah. Because some people don't want to go in the crowd, they don't want to line up
Yes.
and what have you. So we thought, okay, if you want that, let's just give an opportunity to feel a little VIP.
I think it's good.
Yes.
The church is moving with the trend. And
Yes.
like you mentioned, we are in the world, but
Yes,
not of the world.
that's right. And I think we have to be relevant. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, we definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, the church needs to be relevant. But then, how do you go with all the things we see on social media today?
Oh.
The violence, the killings
Yeah.
in Africa or across the world. How do
know,
we manage that as a church?
Let me just say, first of all, social media is a very powerful platform, but it's also a dangerous platform. I think sometimes it ignites stuff. Now, whereas people had to go through channels like this to be heard, everyone now can set up their own channel. They can have their own audience, and then sometimes they can encourage people who already have a challenge with whatever, disgruntled people, so you can pull them and they'll be, yeah, I agree with you, because they're already angry about something.
Yes.
I believe when I see certain things happening in the country, and not to dismiss what's happening, because it hurts my heart. And we as a church, we send people, missionaries, well, we don't use the word missionaries, but we have outreach team that goes to countries. We feed, we build, we were one of the first churches that went to when the Haiti situation happened there, and the devastation. We flew people over, fed them, built a school that's there, pumped water, and all of these different things that we have done, humanitarian stuff. I really believe as kingdom people, and when I say kingdom, why do I use that word? Because the Bible says that one of the things that God did, he created us to have dominion, and the dominion is an etymology of the word kingdom. Dominion means to dominate, to rule. We have been given the power to rule in the earth, and sometimes when we see things happen, we want to blame God and we want to blame the church. But the truth of the matter is, every one of us are responsible for our actions. And unfortunately, the good suffers with the bad. And some of the decisions that we make, unfortunately, people get hurt and people get destroyed from the whole process. And as a preacher, it burns my heart, it hurts my heart. What do? We try and help preach people to them another way, try and help humanitarian. And there's some things we can't physically do. It's bigger than us, it's more political. We can speak out, and I go and I sit on forums where because I'm a preacher,
yes,
from a governmental perspective, I'm able to speak to presidents, I'm able to speak to, governors. We were one of the first church back in the day, was one of the advisors to Tony Blair when he was, and I don't know if that's a good idea because of the war, but we were one of the advisors, and we had groups of people that was going to 10 Downing Street once a month to advise the government. We go places and we see people and we can give an advice, but again, whether they take our advice, that's another thing. So when you say, how do we feel? It hurts. What can we do? We try and do what we can do politically, let our voice be heard. And of course, we're Christian people. We believe in the power of prayer.
True. And God is still in the business of answering prayers.
He is. I have
That's
to
one
believe
line
that.
I like.
I have to
saw it
believe,
somewhere. I was like,
I believe it. I believe it. That's what I'm about. And we can talk all we want to. We can discuss. We can use all our little ideologies. But at the end of the day, God is in control. When we say is in control, let me break that down. Yes, man has dominion in this our world, and he has given us the power to do what we're doing, but we can ask him to intervene.
What's the prophetic message for 2019?
Well, for me, I believe for us as a church, we've used the word acceleration. What does that mean? It means God speeding up things, and it's quite funny. Whether it's good or bad, there's a speeding up that's going on. In terms of technology and everything, there's a speeding up. Now, when I say that it's the year of divine acceleration, that's the word I've been using. It's God pushing and moving things fast so that his agenda can happen in the earth. When I use the word acceleration, a lot of things come to people's mind because, it means moving fast, like a momentum is happening.
Yes.
And I believe that in this season, there are some things that God is doing very quickly, very quickly. Now, people say, well, what's that part? When we say accelerate, it's like a car. What does it do? You press the pedal and the car moves forward.
Yes.
But the key thing is the position of where it's going. And I believe that those who have the God agenda, those who have focused themselves on what God is trying to do in this season, God is going to push his agenda very quickly. The sad thing, those who need to go will have to go in terms of, because acceleration doesn't mean only good, it can be bad too.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's what I believe in this
Divine
season.
acceleration.
Divine acceleration.
Okay. How often do you visit Nigeria?
I go to Nigeria quite often. I've been twice for the year preaching. I was in there just before they cancelled the election. In fact, the week where the election was supposed to happen, it got cancelled. So I go there quite often. Let me just say, as a person from my parents born in the West Indies, the first place I went was in Africa was Nigeria, and it was a life-changing experience for me. Let me explain why. Because brought up in this country, I was born in the East London, and my parents are from Jamaica. When I would go to Jamaica, they would say to me, "British boy." That means I'm not Jamaican. And when brought up in this country, I felt like a black boy that was born here, but not felt totally British because of all the rejections, all the racism, etc. When I came to Africa and I went to Nigeria and I hit the first thing, it was very emotional for me. I was like, Africa is my home, because that's where our ancestors came from.
True.
Then something marvelous happened to me. We were in church, they were worshiping and they were singing, I'll never forget it, in the Yoruba language. Mm-hmm. And they were singing a song, Baba Osheo Baba. Mm-hmm. And they were singing this song, and all of a sudden I began to cry like a baby. Because somehow my spirit knew the song, but I couldn't articulate it. And I felt this connection between the people who I could finally say, these are my people. And so ever since then, I remember I brought a delegation with me to Africa, and some of them were Nigerians who had never been, young Nigerians who, like, because again of all the negativity, I don't want to go to Nigeria. And I was like, no, you come to your country. I brought some of the West Indians, and when I looked around that day, I'll never forget, everybody was crying. Everybody was crying. Everybody was crying because something happened to us. So since that day, I've traveled a lot of Nigeria, and I went as far as trying to find my DNA, and then I found out, which I was a little bit disappointed because I thought it was Nigerian. I found out then I was from, well, I've got a lot of DNA.
Yes.
When I trace.
Yes.
I can go, it goes all the way from the Arab right down to Guinea-Bissau. I've got a little bit Portuguese in me, a little from the, what's that other country, Portuguese African country. But my real thing is I've got Sierra Leonean blood in me. And I come from a tribe called the Limba tribe. So for me, Africa on a whole, the continent of Africa sits very much in my spirit. I get more empowered when I go there. I get burdened when I get upset. All of the emotions, because that's home for me. And so Nigeria has a special place in my heart because that was the first place.
Yes.
Love Nigeria, love the people, love what God's doing, love to see the changes that's happening. And I just wish Nigeria, because I believe it could be the next Dubai. But of course, I don't blame all of the challenges that Africa has on Africa. When you look at our history, we are still being enslaved by a way of thinking that stems from slavery.
Why can't we seem to get it right?
First of all, I don't know if you have time for me, but the challenge I believe...
Just a few lines,
okay,
yes.
The challenge I believe, we have not even been able to celebrate slavery. What do I mean by celebrate slavery or acknowledge? Let's use that word. The Jews acknowledge Holocaust.
Yes.
One of the things I recognize in the Bible, and I'm going to tell you this, anytime something happened to the people in Israel, God always said, turn it into a celebration. We hear the Passover, we're coming up to Easter. Passover wasn't a great thing. It was to do with people enslaved, okay, and the time where the Egyptians was going to kill all the firstborn, and God said, put the blood on every house, and when you put the blood on every house, he's going to destroy all the firstborns, and an angel's going to pass by, but where the blood is, so that's to do with the word Passover, that's where it is. It means the angel's going to pass over that particular house. The Passover is also linked to the crucifixion. These are celebrations that the Jews have. They celebrate. If you can't look at your pain and see it as positive, it will always be pain. I think that's our problem as black people. We've not been able, we don't know. Ask a person, when was slavery abolished? Most of us don't know. I can't even remember right now. I was told it before, but we can't remember because we're not taught to celebrate that. So we're still carrying a lot of things.
Do we think we feel a lot of shame? That's why we might not want to associate with it.
We feel a lot of shame. There's a lot of
anger.
A lot of anger, and there's a lot of confusion. And I'm going to tell you why there's a lot of confusion. Because I sit down and I watch programs where people talk about, there was conversations about being repaid for all of the things that black folks... Repatriation, that's the word I was looking for. And there was a bit of anger about that, and I heard my own black people saying, why do we know? We need to move on, we need to move on.
Yeah.
And that's been us as black people. We're trying to move on and never address our pain. And as long as we don't address our pain, it will go from one generation to the next. Now, that's my deepness.
And we just hope maybe the fourth generation would not forget
I think
completely.
I think we're getting there. I think we're getting there. We're getting there. The problem is, do we have black history in our classes? What history are we being taught? And the history... Oh, I'm going deep.
It's
here.
been diluted.
Okay.
It's been diluted.
Right.
So now let's talk about the prophetic prayer and praise conference for next weekend.
So
the message and the music.
Right. This weekend coming in, it's our last, by the way. I believe that God brings us in seasons. So this one's going to be absolutely an incredible one, and everybody's coming to celebrate. Yes. It's going to be the last prophetic prayer and prayer conference. I think the Lord's telling me to do something a little bit different and a little bit more, and I'm going to announce it in the conference what I'm going to be doing next. But a little bit more inclusive. I'm scared of that word, by the way, but more inclusive to I think what God is doing right now. Because I think we have to be current. I'm not saying that the prophetic prayer and praise wasn't current, but more current. Okay. So what we're doing, it's going to be powerful. It's going to be singing. It's going to be a lot of praise and worship. Yes. Powerful preaching, powerful
and let's
teaching.
talk about the role of Ben Television in all of this.
Yeah, well, Ben is here, and Ben is doing a great job of making it happen. Because, this is an outlet.
Yes.
We got to understand, as Ben Television, and I admire, this is one of the first black stations in this country, and this was our first outlet, and I salute my friend Brother Alistair for what he's been doing. And when you're a pioneer, others gain the benefit, because you're the one goes through all the hell and all have to fight everybody to get where, and these new one comes in and they act like they got their own steam. But God has used this as a great network to communicate. So, you know, chill out, watch what happened. I'm sure what we probably do is get some of the clips and show them on Ben TV.
We're going to say. And definitely we are looking forward to this event.
Yes,
so
I want everyone.
It's going to be different.
Yes, definitely.
The last one you'll be doing, the Prophetic Prayer and Praise Conference 2019.
Definitely. And I want everybody to be there. I want all of my friends, all of my Nigerian community. I've been going to Nigeria 26 years now. Yes. So, you know, come on. I want you to support, 20 plus years.
20 plus
years. I've been going to Nigeria. I was even offered land in Nigeria.
I hope you took it.
I didn't. But that's now, guess where that place is? All Ikoyi and all of them places.
It's so expensive now.
Exactly. I would have been a millionaire.
100 million. Oh, yes, definitely.
I would have been a millionaire.
Okay, thank you very much. No, but you can still.
Okay.
You can still get something. Okay, so I've been speaking with Bishop John Francis of the Ruach City Church, and we've been talking about the marvelous conference that the church is holding this weekend. Prophetic Prayer and Praise Conference 2019. That's a beautiful poster, by the way.
Thank you.
Okay, and I must say thank you very much for being my guest.
Oh, thank you. You've been
wonderful.
wonderful.
An interviewer's delight.
Oh, really?
Fantastic interview we had.
Thank you. I think I'm a little bit spoiled because I used to do TV as well. So
that's good. Beyond that, I mean, you have on every topic that concerns the black race, and of course on Christendom, tithing, and it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
You.
Okay, and that's our show for, I would say, the moment. And of course, if you stay with me at 7 p.m., we'll be coming on live with Rose on All Sides. And we'll be talking about the violence that is renting the African continent, and especially in Nigeria, Zamfara, Borno State, and all over. This should stop. Thank you very much for joining me. And of course, I believe you would love to be a part of the Ruach Church event for next weekend. Prophetic Prayer and Praise Conference. I'm looking forward to it, and definitely I'm going to be there. Great. My name remains Rose Peter Graham. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Andre Jones, Ruach City Church, Philadelphia, preaches a revelatory word. With guest psalmist Anthony Brown and Group Therapy, Megan Williams McNeil, and Zen Praise. Join us from the 18th to the 22nd of April at Ruach City Church, the Gaumont State Theatre, 197 to 199 Kilburn High Road, London, NW6 7HY. Day and evening sessions, or register now for preferred seating. For more information and hotel accommodations, visit our website, www.ruachcitychurch.org, or call 020-8678-6888. Prophetic Prayer and Praise Conference 2019. Co-Mission. Get ready for Prophetic Prayer and Praise Conference 2019. Co-Mission. Thursday.